And we are going. What is going on with everybody? It is your boy Eric, aka Young God, coming to you live in the Orange Dungeon, giving it to you real raw rugged. And I got a very, very special person on the other line. I'm gonna let him introduce himself, man. Who do we have here today?
Hey, this is Kevin Willmott. In Lawrence, Kansas. I'm the co-writer of Blackkklansman and The Five Bloods, and the upcoming director of the upcoming film, The 24th.
Hey, man. I can't say I haven't been this hyped for an interview in a minute. Like,
Thank you.
like pacing back and forth, like what I'm gonna ask. Like, this is one that I'm really hyped about, man. So
Oh, very cool, man.
let me tell you how this even happened. So a minute ago, I discovered this film called the Black Power mixtape, right? And
Yes.
you know about that?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I've seen it, but I know it. Yes.
So I'm trying to find this movie. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't trying to pay for it. I was trying to find a bootleg. I was online trying to find a free version. I was not trying to pay for this movie at all, man. So
Yeah.
I've literally spent days trying to find this movie. I was like, you know what, man? The white people got me. I'm gonna get the white people my money, man. I was like, I can't. Hey, y'all got my money, whatever, man.
Go
So
give in, right?
yeah, I just gave in, man. I was like, man, white man, here go my money. So I found a loophole. I went on Apple TV, and I think IFC had a 14-day trial where you can watch whatever you want for free, and before the 14th day, you cancel. You don't got to pay anything. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
I kind of did a
There
little
you go.
loophole, kind of finessed the system right here. So I'm like, all right. So I watched the
Yeah.
movie. Super duper good movie, and I think I got bored like a couple days later, and I was like, let me just see what else is on here. So I see this movie where the cover art, the picture art for it, it's like a man on the moon with a Confederate flag, and it says CSA, and I'm like, this is weird. Like this isn't how history went down. What is this? This isn't real. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna watch this because this looks really weird. So I watched it, and I gotta say that is possibly the most interesting film I've ever watched in my life, and so interesting that I just had to do a deep dive on you. And ever since, I've been tapped in everything that you do, man. That film is amazing.
Oh, thank you, brother. Thank you, man. It's been interesting to see how it's like Trump. I call him King Tang. Uh, uh, Tang is it's like we're living in the third act of that movie, man. You're like we're living in right now. We're living in the third act of that film, and you got this guy running for president who's desperately trying to hold on to the Confederacy, man, because that's all he's got. It's a pretty amazing time right now.
And I feel like 2020, because that film is basically like a mockumentary, like an alternative, like parallel universe type of thing, like an alternative
Yeah,
timeline.
right.
2020 legit feels like an alternative timeline. We were just talking about coronavirus, Trump,
Yeah,
people dying left and right. Like it's insane.
it's insane, man. It's insane. I mean, I was just telling my daughters, man. It's like I don't know what people are going to call this time when we finally get out of this shit. It's like if we survive this damn time, what are they going to call this time, man? It is a unique moment, man. Very unique moment.
You being a little bit older than me, can you say that this is the craziest year for the world that you've experienced, or have you experienced something else crazier than this?
No, man. I think this is. I mean, I've been asking the same question to the older people I know, and they've all told me. People in the '80s and '90s are telling me we've never seen no shit like this.
Mm.
This is the craziest it's ever been. And I think, man, it's the pandemic would be one thing, but on top of it, having Trump in the middle of this is just and then on top of that, George Floyd is lynched, and and the Black Lives Matter movement kind of takes on a new level. And so there's good, there's bad, there's insane, there's crazy. I mean, it is. I mean, I was a kid in 1968. I was like 10 years old or so, and so I got to see it all. Just as a kid watching it. People compare this time to '68.
Hmm.
King is killed, Bobby Kennedy is killed. Clearly, I mean, things were, you know, really crazy then. But this is crazy in a different way. This is crazy in a way that that it's kind of more out of control in a way. I mean, I almost think that 1968 probably makes more sense than this does right now. I think mainly because the pandemic and Trump. I mean, Trump is such a messed up figure because he doesn't believe in the system,
Mm.
and people thought that fascism was coming back then in the '60s, but you look at Nixon and those guys. Those guys all believed in the system, and they were screwing people around with the system. And this guy, I mean, he's outside of every norm. He's outside of everything. And the big fear, of course, is that he's gonna lose, and then they have to drag his ass out of the White House, man, or have a fight to get him out of the White House. And I mean, I can clearly see that coming.
And I mean, hey man, maybe this is a new idea for a new movie. I just came up with this in my head, but on some alternative alternative timeline. I've always said this, but you just like kind of breaking down how he's not a part of the system. I said a lot of things that Trump has said. If a black person would have said it and been for black people, it would be amazing. Like fake news, we always say stuff like that. Like with the news, like Trayvon
Yeah,
Martin, like they showing
yeah,
Trayvon Martin with goals and stuff. It's like, bro, what is
yeah,
it's like this ain't representing
yeah.
the news that's really to us. So I feel like
That's
if a
right.
black man that was really for black people or a black woman that was really for black people ran like not for the system and was using these kind of like just apolitical, very just out there ideas that would
Yeah,
work for us. But it's kind of like he's doing that and doing it for the whites. It's kind of working for them. So it's
yeah.
it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
It's crazy like that. Yeah, and what's interesting is because I was just talking about kids about this. It's like because of the pandemic, uh, and they're forcing people to go back to school and teachers to go back to school, and they're afraid. This Florida's in the middle of that, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it's the opposite of white privilege.
Mm.
It's like white people are now. It's like when white privilege turns against you. It's
Mm.
like, um, you know, they've always had the belief in the system that the system kind of looks out for them. And now the system's kind of going, no, you got to come back to school and teach these kids, and we may just kill your ass.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. So just you got to do it. And they've never had to question the system or question that the system was looking out for them or not. And it's going to be really interesting to see, I mean, how bad it's going to be, for one thing. And when the school starts, I mean, clearly no one's looking out for anybody right now.
Mm.
I mean, if I mean, it's I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Herman Cain, but it is that old thing the old folks told you: if you let them, they will kill you.
Mm.
And that's kind of where we're living right now, and white folks have got to come to terms with that because they don't. Nobody's looking out for them either, and
Yeah.
they've been figured out before it's too late,
And
man.
the way that I look at it, so I'm a psychology major. I go to school for psychology.
Mm,
And in 10th grade, I took a sociology class. That was kind of my first ever psychology RAM class. And the teacher described the class. He said, "This class, you will learn how people think." He was like, "For example, you will understand how Hitler got so many people to get on his side to kill so many
right.
Jewish people, right?" So the way I look at the Trump thing and the way you say like how white people kind of like white people is kind of being like used against them at this point, it's kind of like they're so deep into it the same
Yes.
way if you're like a follower of the Nazis back then, you're so deep into it, even if they're going completely off the deep end, you're like,
Yeah.
I'm already in this. This guy is like kind of my lord right now. So how do I jump off? You know what I'm saying? It's like a
Yeah.
cult type of thing almost at a
It's a
point.
total cult thing, man. And I think the thing he said yesterday about postponing the election
Yeah.
and Republicans finally. A couple of them finally came out and said, "I don't think we can do that."
I didn't know he said that for real.
Yeah, I mean, a couple. Yeah, he said that yesterday, man.
Wow.
He was trying to say, and I'm a history nerd, so it's like, man, in the Civil War, they didn't postpone the election. I mean, I mean, we're at war with the North,
Yeah.
and the South is at war, and they still had elections. So,
Yeah.
man, there's no postponing the damn election, dude. Come on, man.
Nah, that's insane. And I guess kind of going back to CSA when you say you're a history nerd, I can tell because it's so much stuff in there that you taught me, man. Like I like to think I'm a history buff. You taught me a lot of stuff in that movie that I had no idea. Like the whole auntie and uncle I didn't realize that was a thing that was used in slavery to call like kind of like the mammy or whatever. I had no idea about that, so that kind of blew my mind. And then what really blew my mind was the commercials, and at the very end, how you say like, "Hey, most of these commercials are actually based on like real things." Like
Yeah.
crazy, man. I think my most the thing where I was like, "This is genius," is the slave auction network part. That
Yes.
was crazy. I want to know, how did you think about that one? That was crazy to me.
Well, the whole premise of the film is for one to show kind of how it really did work, and to make people experience slavery in the modern world today. Because it really kind of the film kind of grew out of my frustration, really working in Hollywood, that I could not. This was almost 30 years ago now, but you know, with them really just not wanting to tell that side of the American story.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote a script with a buddy of mine on John Brown, the abolitionist, and it was told from the point of view of Shields Green. And Shields Green was one of the slaves that was with John Brown. And you can't understand John Brown without looking at it from the point of view of a slave.
Mm.
If you look at John Brown from the point of view of a slave, American history said he's crazy, but no one says that people that own slaves are crazy, but the guy trying to free the slaves, he's crazy.
Yeah.
And so it's really that point of view thing that shapes everything with history. And so I really wanted to just, I was frustrated about the Confederate flag. At that time, it was flying over South Carolina,
Mm.
State House. And you see it on cars. I live in Kansas City. I see it on cars all the time. And so I wanted to define the CSA for once and forever, and um, so the criteria was really just taking things that existed that people didn't know about, and also taking modern things and carrying out, if slavery kept going, what would those modern things look like? And so that's where the slave shopping network comes from. It's like, slavery. The worst thing about slavery, it was totally normal, and that's the thing that I think people, this time we're living in right now, um, the shocking thing about it is that he keeps doing and promoting things and saying things that makes racism normal again.
Yeah.
And that's the big fight we've always had in the country, and that's the fight we're having now. Is that Republicans, those white people that supported him, they know racism is wrong. Archie Bunker told us racism was wrong back in the 70s, and they still know that, and they don't want to be called racist, but they want to benefit. They want to benefit from all the good things racism gives them.
Mm.
And that's really the CSA. I mean, that's just it's all the same thing, man. That film for me, man, has made me always look at America in two different ways. It's like America's always been two countries, the USA and the CSA, and it started out as a CSA, and then was founded as a CSA. That's really why we have a civil war, because the South was saying, like, wait a minute, hold up. We was always in the slave business, dude. So
Yeah.
what's the stuff about Abraham Lincoln? What are you talking about? Not taking my slaves from you now. This is the founding fathers are slave owners. It's all, slavery's been a normal part of everything. And so it's really been since the Civil War, and since then, that we've tried to become the USA. And the country's invented three times. It's invented, when we fought the Revolutionary War, then when it really becomes the USA in the Civil War, and then it becomes even more the USA in the Civil Rights Movement.
Mm.
And I think we're kind of living in this moment now where we may the hope I think we all have is that we're going to take it to the next level of what the USA could be, where Black folks don't have to be in fear of everything 24 hours a day and just trying to live in this country.
Now I made this video like right after the George Floyd thing, kind of touching on like the hope of the next USA or whatnot. And I'm a really optimistic person, but I think I've gotten to the point where I've lost optimism for that next USA, and I say that because I feel like if you okay, so in sociology, I also learned that if there's different type of like I forget the word, but basically structures don't change if they work.
Sure.
So like the education system or religion, they just don't change because if they're put in place and they work, they might bend just a little bit, but they won't change. So the foundation of what America has been built on with the
Right.
Confederate, I mean, with the Bill of Rights, with everything that literally was like created from 17 92 or whenever they were created, they are they are things that are made for white people. And like even if you add like a 13th amendment or a little like jabber here and there, the foundation of these things are still like rooted in hate. Like the police system was founded, like the American police system, I think the dude name is August Vollmer, if I'm not mistaken. He's like the father of American police. And he was
Right.
involved in a lot of crazy stuff and did a lot of crazy things, you know? So it's like even the police system is founded on hate and white supremacy. So I just don't see anything changing when these things still are rooted within the original, I guess, root of hate.
I agree 100%. I mean the hope you kind of that you really grasp and try to find and hold on to on some level is that that we're kind of reassessing some things right now,
Mm.
and that reassessment is really kind of we've never done that really in this country. I mean that thing you're talking about that when you're talking about how institutions are self-maintaining.
That's the word, institutions. I'm glad you made that. Thank
Institutions are self-maintaining, and they always look out for themselves first, and they don't worry about taking care of folks.
you.
They don't worry about if they're not. Also, this institution was founded 200 years ago, and it functions fine. Oh, I'm sorry, it doesn't work for black folks or poor folks or whoever, right? But that's just the way it is, and I think for the first time we're starting to kind of even question that a little bit, and that is such a shocking thing, in terms of in terms of how we've lived in this country.
Yeah.
I know it's minor in the midst of all of this, but the fact that it's even being questioned is kind of a huge achievement. And I mean, the verdict's still out. I mean, I think you're right again, where 90% of the time, 100% of the time, 99% of the time, it just fades away and nothing changes. These moments pass, and nothing really changes. Let's just hope that somehow, we get a little something out of this.
I look at Germany and it's like if a lot of these white people were to do and hold these like old racist values in Germany, like you get arrested for that type of stuff, like having like Nazi
Yeah,
flags and like cause I
yeah.
don't think America never had a denazification for black people, you know. So if it was like
No, about it.
deniggification or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like we
Right.
never we never had anything like that. But in Germany, they made
Yeah,
sure all of that rhetoric was out of here.
yeah. Well, that's exactly right, man. I mean, what you're talking about is we should have had that thing that happened in South Africa when apartheid ended. We needed a Truth and Reconciliation Committee,
Mm-hmm.
and we, it's like when um, the TV show recently on HBO, Watchmen, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they had the episode about the Tulsa massacre, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, they had a massacre in Tulsa. Did you know about this?" It's like, yeah, I do, but you don't know about that because you didn't have to know about that because it wasn't important to anybody. Those black lives didn't matter, and so you didn't have to know about that. And but in a country that really wanted to reconcile itself with its history and wanted to really kind of make everybody on the same page racially, You would have had we would have been taught about those things. My new film, The 24th, is another example of that. It's we the fact that we aren't all on the same page. Even black folks don't know a lot of this stuff,
Hmm.
and the fact that Americans are just racially really ignorant for the most part. It hurts us. It hurts the country. It hurts everything. I mean, it really hurts us in terms of this fight this ongoing struggle we have with the police. Because if you know about these things that you were just talking about, how the police really grows out of slavery. I mean, slavery. If you get online, you can look up the slave catcher badges that they have, and policing in the South grows specifically out of slavery. It grows in the North. It's a little different, but it's this connection to the slavery is connected to the North as well, and so policing was all about slavery, and there was no police force until they were trying to maintain and catch slaves.
Mm.
Uh, so that's something that people, when you understand that stuff, you now understand, why we're always been surveilled. We were surveilled back then, and it's never really ended. We've always been watched and monitored and kept in check, and that was what the police force was used for, and it's still used for that.
The way I look at it is because you said a lot of even black people don't know this history. In that same video where I was talking about George Floyd, I made a highlight that I feel like people really don't care about black people, including black people a lot of times because I make this example basketball. I'm a huge basketball fan, huge sports fan in general, but let's say basketball. So even before the basketball pause because of the whole quarantine, I was still keeping up with it. During the pause, I was keeping up what was going on. If anybody's getting in trouble or whatnot, I know the history of basketball. I know everything about basketball. So, and that's because I love it. That's because I care about it. So, same thing about black people. If you really cared and loved black people, you would know the history of black people. You would know why black people are here today. You would know about Louis Farrakhan and why Louis Farrakhan may be problematic. You would know about Malcolm X, why he was in the Nation of Islam, got out. You would know all these things
All
because
these
you
things.
care about black people. And if you
That's
care
right.
about black people, you have to know the black history to know why we're here today and how we get out of this situation and be better. So I feel like the fact that a lot of people don't know this and they willingly just like go over it and then they might see it on their Twitter timeline. Like people care about George Floyd because it was on their Twitter timeline. What if it wasn't? What if it just happened in your local
Yeah,
area? Would you know about it? Would you be trying to find out about it? Would you be looking at your news? Would you be tapped in with the communities? Would you know if there's
that's
some
right.
type of like Black Panther organization in your? People don't really care about these things because I personally feel like a lot of people don't care about black people, and that's because it's not important. We're not important to people. We're
No,
not.
you're right, man. You're right, man. I mean, that's a big part of that struggle we're talking about, man. We're kind of hip right now. We're kind of in the news right now.
Yeah.
Everybody's interested in Black Lives right now. But typically that only lasts a certain amount of time. And what happens when we're not the hip thing? When it moves on to whatever it's going to be next? And can we get anything done? Can we get the justice and the the hope that everybody's talking about right now? I mean, that thing you're talking about. How black folks didn't even do that. That's a big part of our problem, man. I mean, you really can't solve your problems if you don't know where you've been. You really
Hmm.
can't. You can't get out of the hole you're in if you don't know how you got in the hole.
Yeah.
And um, so it's. I mean, that's really kind of why I make the movies I make because, um, it's my way of kind of being an activist. I think that's probably Spike's way of being an activist as well. I think you just hope you can help the cause a little bit by telling these stories.
Before we move from CSA, I just want to say one more time, I thank you for making that movie because The
Oh
Five
no,
Bloods, Blackkklansman, those are great movies, but everybody knows about that. I feel like, just like music. It's like maybe an artist everybody know about, but you may know this like little underground smarter. You like, yo, you need to check this guy out. Like, this guy is great. And I feel like that's CSA. It's like the movie that's probably not as big as The Blackkklansman, but it's like,
right?
it's up
Sure.
there with Blackkklansman. Like, it's that good. And I love it because not only, like I said, I like history, you add like comedy in there to keep a person entertained. Like I think one of the funniest part to me is when Harriet Tubman is helping Abe Lincoln and I think like they're getting chased or something like that, and they're hiding in like a bunker. And you said Abe Lincoln looked at her and said, "We both some niggas not," and that just, boy, that had me just crying. And I'm like, yo, this movie is hilarious. Or the part like, I probably shouldn't even laugh at this because it wasn't funny, but it was the "It's My Boy" commercial where the guy was dancing. I'm like, yo, this is just
Oh,
ridiculous, man.
oh, yeah, man, no doubt, man. It's like J.J.
Crazy.
Walker, right? He's got to come.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. So like I said, I just had to thank you
Well, no,
for making
no,
those
no.
films, man, for sure.
Well, that's the thing about when you kind of make an underground film.
Yeah.
Um, you really get the freedom to do what you want to do, and and the movies I've made kind of on my own for the small budgets. I have another one called Destination Planet Negro. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I literally just got done watching that. That was I wanted to talk about that. That was also a good movie, man. You freaking go to the Earth today, and now you're with listen to hip hop. Like, hey, is the massa in their ears? Like that's great, man. Love that movie.
Yeah, man. So that's the thing about when you make the small movies like that. You kind of can break it down and don't have to worry about offending folks and people not understanding. We just kind of say it like it is, right?
Yeah, that's a fact, man. And like I said, it just to see what you can do with the underground budget, and then when you work with somebody like Spike Lee, it's like, yo, like this is crazy. Like watching the Five Bloods, I watched that this year, and that was a good movie, man. That was a good movie. Like when I first watched it, I have to watch it a second time. I only watched it one time. I was at first I was like, I don't know where this movie is going because I was a little lost for a second. But where it picked up for me, honestly, was when I forget his character name, but when it come named Paul, when Paul first snapped on the boat
Yeah,
with the
on the
chickens,
boat. Yeah,
that was a very interesting scene to me because I'm not gonna lie, that's what brought me into the movie. Like I was like, hey man, because he was like, get the motherfucking chicken. I was like, yeah, get the motherfucking chicken off him, man. It's like, get the
yeah,
chicken.
yeah,
I
yeah.
start feeling at that point, and I feel like that movie is interesting because I'm very interested in mental health, and just to see how like you could tell he wasn't all the way there, like because he was having
Right.
PTSD flashbacks, and he was,
Yeah,
because he killed his. Spoiler alert for anybody that if you haven't seen the movie, I'm definitely gonna spoil the movie right now. But he killed, he killed his homie in the war or whatnot, and you could just tell he hasn't been right ever since, saying that he been seeing him come back in his dreams, and it's
yeah.
definitely a very very interesting movie. And I was just curious, like how did that come about? How did that movie concept, you and
Sure.
Spike, come about that?
Well, that was like Blackkklansman. That was a rewrite that Spike and I got, and we kind of get together and we decide what we're going to bring to it, and how we're going to change the script and make it kind of a Spike film,
Yeah.
really. Um, that the thing about the PTSD was always in the script, but what I think what we did was make it about the accidental shooting,
Mm.
and that's why he's being so tormented by it, and the thing that I grew up with in the small town in Kansas I grew up in is adjacent to Fort Riley, Kansas.
Mm.
I grew up in called Junction City, and Fort Riley is where the Big Red One is, which is the group that they are in the film.
Yeah.
And Fort Riley is also where the Buffalo Soldiers were. So the Buffalo Soldiers were in my neighborhood growing up, and also, I got to be around and grow up around all these soldiers coming back from Vietnam,
Mm.
and the Bloods was, I got to see all the dap handshakes and. I mean, the brotherhood and camaraderie these guys had, man, they had a real love for each other, and that's the thing we really try to put in the film that really makes the accidental shooting that Paul does makes it even worse, because this is that moment really, man, where black people started to really love themselves.
Yeah.
This is when Black is Beautiful is just coming out, and James Brown said a lot, I'm black and I'm proud, and everybody's wearing afros, and black people really learning to love themselves. That's when we started getting into Black history, and Stormin' Norman is the guy that's breaking down their Black history to them. He's
Yeah.
he's the guy really introducing them to all these new things that they never grew up with, and so to kill him is really like killing Malcolm or Martin, or you know what I mean. I mean, he's just you can imagine the guilt he would have with that, you know. Um, so that's that. You know, that was a big part of it. I think for me was that thing. I wanted to make sure that we got across that love that these brothers had for each other. You know, that's something that I don't think we see enough in movies.
No, I love to see I guess I would say like almost like the vulnerability of like
Yeah,
young black men or just
yeah,
black men in general you don't really see in movies or society or just music or just a lot of times. So I do want
that's right.
to. That's another thing. I do want to thank you and Spike for kind of displaying that. And another thing that I kind of realized like in Planet Negro you like spend a small time talking about I forget in what context, but just people being uncomfortable and not being comfortable all the
Yeah,
time. And I'm not gonna lie, the very it was parts of the movie I was very uncomfortable in the Five Bloods, like, and I was very curious if you could touch on that. Like, was that on purpose? Like the real
yeah.
footage of dude getting
Oh,
shot,
got in the head.
or the
Yeah,
baby, the dead baby. I
yeah,
was like, whoa, this is crazy. So I'm very curious of like what was
yeah.
the context of adding that, because that made me feel uncomfortable, and I'm just curious, was that supposed to be like the purpose of that?
Yeah, well, you know, it's kind of with Mike and I, we have kind of an unspoken, undiscussed kind of understanding with each other. I think both of us, in general, kind of just believe that film should make you uncomfortable.
Mm,
That it's that discomfort that really helps us move forward, and with just everything. I think you know, I think there's so many things that are buried that are not discussed, that are not revealed to us as Americans
yeah,
because of the stuff they want us to believe, right? And it's what we've been talking about. Um, and then when you get to see illustrations of that, of the real reality of what American life is and what Americans do around the world, all of those things. You have a responsibility to really show them, and you have a responsibility to kind of go there, and so that's I think you know, that's what CSA does. I mean, CSA made a lot of people uncomfortable, made a lot of black and white folks,
yeah.
uh, and but it's that discomfort I think is where the truth is. I always think the thing I've been saying a lot lately is that to be an American is to be uncomfortable,
Mm,
and the closer you get to being uncomfortable, the closer you get to being what being an American really means.
mm,
And you know how uh, all the people that are on the margins of our society um, live in these uncomfortable places and spaces. You know, gay folks, transgender folks, black folks, you know, Latinos, you know, Asian folks. We all got our little area that we're getting our ass kicked in,
yeah.
and that we're pushed out of, and that we're being oppressed in various ways, even white folks to some degree. And and you know, most of pop culture is about not really experiencing that, you know, and so you know, if we can find a way to go there in an entertaining way, and you know, where we can, I like to say, take ownership of the issues instead of the issues kind of the history kind of owning us. So much of the time we're owned by this history. We don't really own the history, and that's why you don't see it. They don't want to show you this history because it you know it owns us. We don't own it,
I can
and
completely feel that. Yeah.
yeah, and that's really I think the challenge. I mean, that's the more we understand the fucked up shit we've done in the past, the more you kind of understand where we have to go now. I mean, it's like it's like George Floyd's death.
Mm,
When you know everybody sees that man sitting on his neck with that look on his face, which is it's a classic kind of lynching photograph look
yeah.
where he's unemotional, he's totally disconnected, he doesn't give a damn about this guy's life. He's pleading for his life. He's kind of looks down at him, got his hand in his pocket like it's totally normal, and that footage is the reason that we're having this moment is that footage had to make all of us incredibly uncomfortable. and it takes that discomfort to shake us out of this norm that we have, so that then white people who didn't believe it before now say Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter. They actually, I see now what they were talking. The NFL goes from destroying Kaepernick to then doing what Kaepernick does.
So crazy to see.
That's so crazy. Man, it's crazy. And but it lets you know the power of seeing images that are uncomfortable, and George Floyd's sacrificial death and life that he's given us. I mean, we have this responsibility now to make sure that his death isn't in vain. That footage that'll be etched in our history forever now.
Yeah.
Something grows good out of this, hopefully.
Being uncomfortable is something I'm so interested in. Even in like music, like somebody's like pushing like the envelope in music and just something you're not usually hearing. You're like, what is this? Or comedy, just in general.
Yes.
So for me, like I'm always a person like, yeah, I love to make people feel uncomfortable. So for you to making me feel uncomfortable, it's like you're giving me a taste of my own medicine. Watching, I'm like, oh man, this is what people feel like. Oh man, this is terrible.
It's so good you're saying that, because I think all of us have areas that make us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And anytime we get pushed into something, and usually that discomfort comes from just not knowing it enough, just not being around it and not understanding it as well, and it just makes you uncomfortable.
I think another, not as uncomfortable, but it was kind of unsettling because he was going through an episode, is when Delroy is talking to he's doing like a monologue to the camera at like
Yeah.
towards the end of the movie, and you could just tell he's like losing, he's going through, he's talking. I'm very curious, what was the like creative direction behind like him looking to the camera doing that monologue? That was really interesting to me.
Sure. Well, Spike's done that in other movies, and he likes to do that sometimes. And and you have to. That's one of these kind of choices that you really have to have the right moment for that.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the right moment, it really can be a disaster. In the movie, we homage a little bit of Treasure of the Sierra Madre in the movie, and in that movie, Humphrey Bogart. When he's they've got gold, he's got gold fever, and he's kind of lost it out there, and he's alone, and he's in the kind of a desert type experience, and he starts talking to himself, and he doesn't really talk to the camera, but he's talking to himself, and we kind of really homaged that and thought that would be a really good choice to Delroy's character Paul is got to kind of he's got to fall all the way down so that he then is willing to confront the ghost and the demon of Stormy Norman's death. And, so he kind of descends all the way into hell and then runs into Norman. And then he has a resurrection, and he's kind of finds salvation, really.
That was a nice touch, man. I think something that was an interesting touch, which I didn't understand watching the movie, but then I looked up an interview where Spike kind of addressed it. Is the parts where they're doing flashbacks and they're old, but
Yeah.
and I'm just like, huh, what is going on? But tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I kind of got from what he was saying. That choice was because one, maybe like a little bit of budgeting, but also it was kind of them putting themselves back in that time, like
Yes.
right now, still like the way they look or whatnot, and the reason
Yes.
that Chadwick doesn't look so old is because he died young or whatnot. Is that right?
That's exactly it.
Okay.
And one of the other themes that I tried to link that choice into, because Spike made that choice in the very beginning that he wasn't going to use old age makeup, or he wasn't going to make them young, or he wasn't going to do the digital effect stuff on those guys. Is that war never ends, really? That war, when you're young and you go to war, that war stays with you the rest of your life, and you never really escape it. And it is truly kind of one of the real evils of war, is that even with the mines that are left around, and that kids are losing limbs and being killed by, and that stuff is in any place that there's been war of any kind of major consequence. There's all those mines and stuff all over the place. Kids are still being killed. People are still losing their lives over these things. But more importantly, there's just the memory of war, and that experience stays with you, and you never get over it.
Yeah, that was a very interesting like little piece to me, and the writing in that movie, I enjoy it. Like I said, I was kind of confused at the beginning, but maybe if I rewatch it, I'll understand a little bit better. But like I feel like it was the writing was almost like a crescendo. It started to like okay, okay, and then it's like whoa, this is getting crazy. And I feel like the part where old boy steps on the mime or whatnot, that made my
Yeah,
jaw drop. My jaw, I was like, what is going? And then when his son step, I'm like, what is for the air? That was some intense climaxing right there. And yeah,
yeah,
that was, and then
yeah.
it was crazy. They pulled him off. He's hugging him like, "I love you, I love you." Now, white people, get on your knees. I'm like, whoa, what is going on?
I know,
I was
man.
not
It's so
expecting that.
messed up, isn't
Oh my gosh, I was not expecting that, man. And
it?
I was about to say it's
It,
crazy. I don't know. Was he supposed to be like a villain? Because I don't know if I didn't. I don't know if I disliked him or liked him. I don't know. Like, what was the? Please get into that.
yeah, well, that thing you just described is exactly it. You're not supposed to kind of know if you like him or not. You know, he's a complicated dude,
Mm,
and he loves his son, and then he hates his son.
yeah.
He's a brother to the other Bloods, but then he's not a brother to the other Bloods, and he's totally sane and totally not sane. He's just all over the place, really, and I think that's how guys like Paul are.
Mm,
You know, I mean, I think all of us have known guys like Paul a little bit. Guys that you kind of love, and then these guys drive you crazy at the same time, and they make messed up, stupid choices, and you go, "What the hell are you doing with?
yeah.
What the hell are you doing with? They can't. It's crazy what you're doing." And then, but you can't talk them out of it, and then you understand it on one level, and you don't understand it on another level, and it is it is kind of guys like Paul who often come out of these tragic, insane kind of experiences. They and you love them, but they're really hard to live with. They're really, really hard to live with.
I,
And I mean, like his son,
yeah.
his son has been tortured by him kind of his whole childhood. And but I always tell my wife, it's like, no matter how bad your mommy is, and mama's a little different than daddy's, I think. But no matter how bad your mama is, no matter how bad your mama treats you, you want to be with your mama.
Yeah, that's
You
a
know,
fact.
and the daddies are a little bit different because you don't want to necessarily be with your daddy, but you want to stay connected to your father.
Mm.
Even when they're bad and they're horrible and they torture kids, you still just want to have a daddy, and that's kind of what that part of the film's about.
On a human level, I can see some people not connecting with that because I feel like as humans, a lot of people they gotta put stuff in a box. It's like, oh, he's a good guy, he's a bad guy, he's black, he's white, he's straight, he's gay. So I feel like okay, I'm a big wrestling fan. So in wrestling, you got the good guy, then you got the bad guy, you got
Yes,
the. So like,
right.
let's say if they mix it up and it's you don't know if this is a guy, you like who do I cheer for, who do I boo
Yeah,
against. So I feel
yeah,
like I can see a lot of people watching that movie and feeling like but who is this? Like, what am I supposed to do? Because we got to put stuff in the box. But I think it's interesting. That's nothing pushing the envelope, making people feel uncomfortable. What do I
yeah.
do in this situation? So
Right,
I
right.
appreciate that,
And
man.
we
That's
we
cool.
we even made him a Trump supporter to make him dislike you a little bit more.
That's great to me, man. And like I said, just even films like Blackkklansman, it's just so much good writing and just so much good stuff. And like I don't know like how much you had to do with this part, but one of my favorite parts in Blackkklansman is the Stokely speech,
Oh yes,
and
right.
one of my favorite parts in that speech is when they put the camera on the crowd and their faces are kind of like
Yeah,
that was beautiful. That was a
yeah.
beautiful
That's
shot.
total spike. I mean, we went through all of his speeches, Stokely's speeches, and just found you know really gem stuff
Yeah.
and kind of combined them all together. But Spike created that visual that went along with it, man. That just takes that scene to a whole other level, really, and that the beauty of those images, it kind of it's really kind of says black people are beautiful
Yeah.
and especially then. I mean, there's something about the afro and something about that moment is just a beautiful thing, and it's nice to see how visually stunning that was in the film.
I gotta shout out y'all for casting him as the Stokely because at first I was like, I like Stokely a lot, so I'm like, this don't look like Stokely, man. Who is this? This brother right here, man. By the end of that speech, I felt like I was in the crowd. I was captivated. Like
Yeah,
I've never
yeah,
seen him in a movie before. I'm not familiar with the actor, but that brother, he played that part
yeah. He got
crazy.
down. Yeah, he nailed it. He
He
nailed it.
played
No doubt.
that part beautifully, and yeah, just from everything to that to the scene where you talking about how black people are beautiful, the scene where they're in the club dancing, that's
Oh yeah,
beautiful. That was
yes,
beautiful, man.
yes
That was
indeed.
beautiful.
Yeah, and that again, that was pure Spike on that one because I think he knew it was a that dance is a quick, easy, beautiful way of showing how they kind of fall in love real
Yeah,
fast. How to become really connected real quick, and there's some of that song that Cornelius Brothers Sister Rose song. It's a nice moment.
that's a beautiful little thing. And Black Klansman, that was one where a lot of people like the people that I know, it gave very mixed reviews. It was like I hate this movie or I love this movie. So me going in,
Right.
I was a little nervous. I was like, man, I don't know, but I ended up loving it, man. From everything, that was a really good movie, man. Like writing that movie, do you would it safe to say like you have fun writing these movies, or is this something that kind of stresses you? Because I know a lot of people they might get writer's block doing articles and stuff like that. So writing a movie like Black Klansman with Spike, is that something that's fun? Is it stressful, or is it all of the above? How's that?
Yeah, as the most part, it's fun, man, because working with Spike's always good. One thing we kind of, we don't really have any real disagreements for the most part, um, and I think with that film, it was clear kind of what we wanted to try to achieve with it, and when the things that are frustrating about making movies is when you're not on the same page with people, or
Yeah.
people you're working for someone and they don't really know what they want. That's the big one. That's kind of the most frustrating thing of when you're working for a producer or a director and they don't know what they want, and so you're giving them all these different choices and they don't know which one to pick, or they don't know. That's kind of a recipe for disaster.
Well, hey man, I don't want to keep it for too long. I got a couple fan questions, and we can head
Sure,
out of here, man. So
sure, brother.
the first question is Wine Boy Screw. He has a question that I also noticed too. And I feel like Spike has done this in a couple of his movies, so I don't know if you can answer this one right here. But
Sure.
during the hugging scenes in the Five Bloods, like there were kind of like a edits where like they'll do it twice, so it'd be like a then
Yeah,
it'd be like a So I don't know if
yeah,
you know like the creative decision behind that, or if that's like you do you know anything about that? Because that was really
yeah,
like I
yeah.
didn't get that.
Yeah, that's a stylistic choice that he's done almost from the very beginning.
Yeah,
I don't know if he does it in.
he did it Malcolm X.
He's got a habit, but he
Mm-hmm.
does it. He started doing that. I think with his second film
Mm.
or his third film. But yeah, that's a stylistic choice. Where it's not it calls attention to itself, but it's kind of an extra emphasis. It's a little panache on on something,
Yeah.
little extra accent, Spike's kind of a jazz director a little bit,
Mm.
he it's about the accents and about the little different things he does that makes it a Spike Lee film, and that's always been part of who he is, and so that's where I think that comes from.
All right, all right. Last question is from Tuxedo Mask. He says, asks about his thoughts on some movies still being slated for release in theaters despite the pandemic.
Yeah, my film 24th is coming out August 21st.
Mm.
So it'll be on video on demand, and then it'll probably be streaming somewhere soon after that, hopefully. Um, yeah, it's frustrating because all filmmakers want their movies in theaters, and theaters. You want to just hear that reaction, and I mean that's a big part of why we make the films. Why you're a filmmaker, really. Uh, you want to hear the laughs, you want to hear the gasp, want to feel that thing when everybody gets quiet,
Yeah.
in a so it's a little frustrating right now that we're all kind of We've lost that. Hopefully we'll get it back at some point, man. I fear a little bit that things are going to be different when this thing is over, and I hope we don't lose theaters entirely. I mean, it's going to probably be a little different though.
No, that would definitely suck. I'm very curious about your new movie, the 24th. If you could like go in a little detail more about what that's going to be about.
Yeah, the 24th is about the Houston riot of 1917, and another one of these lost chapters of American history. They sent 700 black soldiers, the 24th Infantry, to Houston, Texas, to guard the construction of a thing called Camp Logan.
Mm.
And World War One was just beginning, and black soldiers wanted to fight in World War One really bad because the hope was if we fight in World War One, they'll see our patriotism and our manhood, and we'll maybe get our rights. We'll get some rights. And so these guys are sent down there, and these guys, they had fought on San Juan Hill with Teddy Roosevelt, Spanish-American War. They fought in the Philippines during the Philippine insurrection. So these guys were used to being treated with a certain degree of dignity, you know? So they sent them down to Houston, Texas, and of course the police force there is totally one of the worst racist police forces in the country at the time. And they start brutalizing these brothers.
Mm.
And these guys couldn't take it anymore, and 150 black soldiers marched on Houston, Texas, and went after the police.
Wow.
And they killed 13 people, and it ended up being the largest murder trial in American history. And if you get online and look up Houston riot of 1917, you'll see a picture of 63 black soldiers on trial at one time. It's the largest murder trial in American history. No one knows about it. So our movies about that.
Hey, I can assure you, I'm not bootlegging this one. I'm definitely going wherever I need to pay for that. Just let me know, man, because I
Yeah.
definitely want to watch that. And
Well, it really ties into the moment we're in right now
yeah,
because it lets you know that one bad policeman 103 years ago when this happened, one bad policeman can destroy a city and a nation, and 103 years later we go through the same thing, brother.
hey man,
So,
I appreciate you sitting down and talking to me. And if you don't mind, before we get out of here, I see a couple books behind you. I don't know if you got any books you want to share for the people that we should probably read during these times when we're just quarantining in the
sure.
house.
Well, I'm writing a script on Arthur Ashe right now, and a tennis player.
Yeah.
But probably the thing I would recommend looking at my books here, is it's a book called Race and Reunion,
Mm.
by David Blight, and I think a really important book, just in terms of understanding what happened after the Civil War, and kind of how the South really won the Civil War, and it really deals with that thing we were talking about earlier, how we needed that Truth and Reconciliation Committee, and we never got it,
Yeah.
and because of that, we're in the position we're in today, still trying to come out of it.
Well, hey, I appreciate you sitting down. For everybody watching right now, I appreciate you guys watching. Until next time, I say what I mean what I say. Haters gonna hate, players gonna play, and you guys holler at your boy.